Oh, what's going on, Chris? Just wanted to do a recap of the podcast that you did. You know, the interview that we did, maybe that you did of me. I think it was maybe about 3 months ago, back in July.
Ye-
Yeah.
Yeah, it would have been towards the end of July, beginning of August. Yeah. So I'm doing a podcast called The Brave New Sound, and it's focused on musicians of this day and age. We've always had a classical music model that has been held for the sake of tradition, but the issue with that is it has not been meeting the needs and the social circumstances of the people of today. So one of the things I wanted to do is to start bringing awareness of the Cavaliers that are starting to change what classical music looks like in the concert hall, and, really focus on emerging musicians and give them a chance to tell their stories and let you all have access to their music so now you can see their impact for yourself.
Right. Very well. Very well. So I think I guess I wanted to start off the conversation with saying, where do we start? And I know that's very broad, but hear what I'm saying. I think two different worlds here. Two different worlds simply because when you're entering into, music, going into college and you're African American and that kind of thing, you're introduced, besides, the composers in which that you've learned of, you now open up your whole entire, you open to a whole new portal of just all different kind of composers of this and that, but you don't necessarily see yourself with this. So I'm saying if you're looking at it like that based on a thing of color, I think that for me, like there's now more of an awakening about trying to now discover or rediscover pieces of music or composers of color that I never knew kind of existed or was out there. For example, I really got interested into William Grant Still, his
Yes.
Afro-American Symphony #1, and his I think it is like poetic preludes for the piano or something. There's a piece called Summerland that I would like to kind of get into. Perfect example. I got to show you this. You're gonna. Oh my God! I've got to share this with you.
Oh man, I'm excited to see this.
This is not William Grant Still. This is actually this is Duke Ellington's Reflections in D. Yeah, I gotta show you this. This is Duke Ellington's Reflections in D.
I don't even
But
think
it,
I've heard of this piece. Now that I think about it.
I have to share this with you. Um, but it's Duke Ellington's. It's Duke Ellington's music, played by Bill Evans, but Albert
Oh,
de la Fuente, if I'm saying his name right, he's he's the one who transcribed it. This right here. Now this is based off of Ellington's song "Reflections in D," but his
right.
transcription of what he did, it was like on some. It's beautiful, man. It's beautiful. It's very Debussy, Ravel, Satie, definitely taken from the school of the French composers, but I don't know. It's just some other stuff in there too as well. So I wanted to print that off and like, because at CBCC, my professor, she's still teaching this rep court this rep class. So in the rep class, one of the students is playing this right here. I didn't hear her play it, but I got a chance to hear it myself on YouTube. I was like, oh, I need to print this off. I just need to see. I just need to study it to see what he's doing exactly. So that may help me to kind of inspire me to write some other kind of pieces or something and kind of see what just burn some inspiration. That's all. So I found that to be interesting. I had to get this too as well. No, but ask me why I got this. I got this because I was just curious of just his piano music. I'm
Oh
not
wow.
necessarily a big fan of Weber, but these are all his piano sonatas, as well as there's some variations of themes here. But really piano sonatas and really seeing the difference about how he develops his his sonatas versus the sonatas of Mozart and Beethoven and pretty much everybody from the classical period. because it's not quite the same development or kind of quite the same thing. I just always curious, and I had to get this. I just had to get this because me as a pianist, one of the things that I realized, especially as I was getting my master's and I was taking applied piano, a professor was really on me, as he should have been, but he was like, "Sir, you're a professional musician. Well, I'm not going to treat you like you are less than anything other than that." So it's the practice that it takes in order to see progress. And so, but it's very rigorous when you're playing the same measures over and over and over and over, or the same section or the same system over and over again, and you feel like you're not making progress. It's better for you to take your time and to do it slow, child's pace, and maybe even like really almost as if you can't play. Then you just playing something wrong and playing over speed and all that. Like it doesn't make any sense because now you're practicing wrong mistakes and it's hard to undo those. So
Exactly.
I literally set out time to really see what Rachmaninoff is doing. This is not an easy piece. Obviously, we know that everybody, I mean, this is also a piece that's been overplayed too as well. But I feel like anytime you get into an actual piece as you're learning it, you start like, I don't know, like you just kind of get into the world of it though. And then really finding what he or she is basically doing. What makes that piece unique? What makes that piece, kind of its own? And then how do you interpret it? So looking at a piece of music and looking at it from an orchestral standpoint, because the way he writes, you can transcribe this probably for like string ensemble or something like that, or wind ensemble probably.
Yeah, and that's exactly where the how do we interpret it part comes in, especially if you're taking a piece and arranging it for or transcribing it for a different ensemble, because each ensemble or each instrumentation has very particular tendencies. So if it's a piece written for piano, then you have to think, oh, so if a pianist were to play this, it's going to create this effect. How do I translate this effect over to the ensemble? Or if I choose not to do it, is there a good reason why? Is there a good reason why I should go against whatever is there? And that's really important, because there's a lot of times where I tell anybody that studies under me as a euphonium player or trombone player, I always tell them that, especially if you're playing other music from other instruments, if you're playing something that was originally written for clarinet, there are going to be things that are just not going to translate, or things that are going to translate better for your instrument. So where you're always going to have that person that's going to give you a hard time saying, oh, you didn't recreate this. Oh, you didn't recreate that. Oh, you didn't interpret this. Oh, you didn't interpret that. But the real culprit behind it is, are you making a musically informed decision about it? And you can't do that until you've entered the world of the piece that the composer has written. Right. And that's something I think has been so much more prevalent, especially with contemporary music, is this is the first, this feels like the first generation of music, well, a couple of generations of music, maybe starting around like 1980s and forward. This is the first generation of music where we are like, what in the world is the composer thinking? And that becomes the focus of our interpretation, of our receiving the music, whether it's for personal enjoyment, whether it's for analysis, whether it's for performance. I think this is the first time that the first instinct is to go to, what was the composer thinking when he wrote this? What is the composer trying to convey? As opposed to using these, how do I say this? So instead of using traditional methods, for example, anything pre-classical era, there was a set instrumentation. So if you had a piano part that you were expanding, there was a way to perfectly divide the parts up, and it will automatically sound good, and it was common practice. And ever since classical era, with the development of instrumentation, then we have the Romantic era with the development of form and harmony, more so with the later Romantic era, where we're definitely going away from any type of traditional sound, going into the new Vietnamese school of breaking tonality.
Right.
The more we progress in music, the more it really comes to, we can't rely on everything that we have used before. So we're gathering information. And the best part about this is now not only are we doing this moving forward with new music, but now we're also going back and looking at old pieces. For example, just like you said, we have a big enlightenment going on. There is, let's just be transparent for a second. African American composers have been kind of pushed off to the side. So if women composers, LGBTQ composers, disabled composers, musicians, they have all been pushed off to the side. And now this is really the chance where we're starting to understand the value of instilling this in the students at a university level, of going back with this new mindset that we have of, okay, now we have this mindset of what is the composer thinking? What's the context of the piece? Now let's go back and let's apply it to composers that have been overlooked. Let's go back and apply this to people that are not found in the textbook, that should be in there, that deserve to be in there, but for whatever reason, they didn't make it in there.
Right. Yeah, that's a great point that you bring up, Chris. Like, for example, in my music appreciation class, I'm teaching, and my first day, actually, I think it was a little bit overload. I think I had overloaded them with so much information. I think I was just excited, and then I just kind of gave them a kind of a overview of kind of what music they would be expected to listen to. So we kind of started from a Gregorian chant, and we started from a Gregorian chant that I went into kind of. Did I do anything from the Ars Nova? I don't think I did anything from Ars Nova. I did one from the medieval period, did one from the Renaissance period, did one from the Baroque. Did one from the classical romantic. We ended at Debussy. Just to kind of give a wide range of selection of how music has changed. Within all of that, there's history that has also helped too as well. The printing press, or the classicism, the society, and what a society was allowed to do versus to, like looking at the Reformation Church and looking at the Renaissance, and then kind of getting out of that, going into, the Baroque. Like, it's just interesting to see how things have kind of interwoven into each other. But when you're teaching in a class like this, I think what's very important is that, because you're dealing with people who understand music. I mean, if you understand music, but it's more so people who are non-music majors versus people who are music majors, where they kind of get it. So I think my objective is to really to teach them, well, an experience, but they walk away with understanding, so I know if I listen to music, I know that, okay, well, I learned about this section, so that's something called section A. And if there's a B, then there's probably something called B, so it's probably binary form. Or being able to just listen to certain phrases and parts of music and be like, okay, differentiate between what I'm listening to, as opposed to just saying, that keeps coming back. How do we identify that exactly? So I'm saying, because that's a foundation of music, and that you really carry that after that, basically, though. I mean, like you said, like the second Viennese of composers and that kind of music, breaking tonality, bitonality, all of that stuff. But at the end of the day, there still are themes, or there still are ideas that may or may not come back. And how do we identify that? So form is a very thing. So form is very translucent, I feel like, as far as being able to identify something from something else, basically. So I think that's kind of the point a little bit. And where we are right now, I think that it's like you said, I think we're going back, and I think that we really are. For me, I think that the philosophy of why we're going back is for trying to understand or unlock something. And so I'm taking back, I guess, to the composers such as the John Cages and the Steve Reich, because I even played a piece for them. It was a piece called Come Out. And it was, I don't know, it was based off speech. And I think I played a little bit of it when I posted on my IG for our podcast, actually. It was come out to show them, come out to show them, come out. Like, it is, that was the phrase. And obviously tape music, it being played over and over and over and over and over again. And then as we know, what we hear, the more and more we play it, or more we hear it, is that we hear the same phrase being played, but then it's in a variation of a rhythm. And then there's other things that's added with that. There's another phrase that's added with that. And he's creating this almost like a soundscape of this phrase that continues to keep repeating over and over again. So tape music was also an example that I used too as well. I had them listen to the Fontana mix by John Cage, and they probably looked at me like, what is this? But I was trying to show them how broad how music really is. Like, you may be bored with some of the stuff from the early stuff. That's fine. But how do we get from that? Now we get to this, as I say, the nasty stuff. You know what I'm saying, because Chris, come on now, it's pretty nasty, man. I'm saying it's nasty because it's good, but it's hard to identify if you don't quite understand where
Yeah,
it's coming from. That foundation of music.
yeah, we're reaching a new type of music that has never been seen before. And the funny part about this has been something that has happened over and over and over again in music. When we started from Gregorian chant, it started to move even from unison lines into organum.
Yeah, that was another example.
Even the
Yeah.
small transitions like that, it was just rocket science. It was just forbidden territory, or just something that was so taboo and unfamiliar and just so difficult for the ear to digest because it's new. And the weird thing about this age is that, I would say pretty much from Gregorian chant all the way to about the end of the late Romantic era, it's always been a linear progression. So it's always been one step in front of the next, in front of the next. But after you get past that late Romantic area, that's where things really start to break off. Because I mean, technically you can even go back before that, but as far as the concert music side, that's really where things start to break off, because you have impressionism that's still technically classical music, but it's drifting away. And then you have jazz that comes in, and it's like, oh, okay, we can draw a little detour to go towards jazz. Then you got Second Viennese School. Then you have the introduction of technology into the music, and now you have electronic music. It's one of the weird things where this is one of the weirdest times to be in, because music has progressed in a non-linear way. It has branched out.
Good.
And now we have all of these different branches that people can just, kind of nestle into their branch and keep on going, even with popular music. Because you got to remember, back in the 20s, the roaring 20s, jazz was pop music. Jazz was pop music. Country. This is, and as they start to branch off, it just keeps becoming something new and a more refined niche. And now it's to a point that, if you wanted to find something that you like, you can find a group of artists, you can find a subset of music that's all like, neighbors are closely related to each other, and you have your little pocket. But there's so much other music out there to explore.
Right.
And it's simply incredible. And with music appreciation, with traditional music education being taken out of the culture of America, not out of the schools, but out of the culture, because you got to remember, back in the Renaissance, the Baroque, the classical era, classical music was a part of home training. So now that it's moved out of the home and into the classroom, there's not only developing that home training that you would have had about 400, 500, 600 years ago, but now you have so many branches of music to explore. And how do you know how to slow it down and process everything that's going on?
Right.
Like, if I were to play one track right after another, how can you compare them and contrast them and, kind of push them into categories to where they fit? Because that was something that was understood before, but now most of everybody just listens to pop music or country music, rock music, and they stay within their branch. But how do we explore music of other branches and be open-minded to it? And that's really the difficult part, and really the neat part about music appreciation.
That's good, Chris. That's great points. And to add to that, how do we add other music from different countries to be able to do that? Because in all over the country, Germany, Israel, everything, they're it's their version of pop music. You know what I'm saying? Based off their system. I know there's a composer that I know of. Actually, he's on my Facebook. His name is Omar Ali, and he uses some type of system. I forgot what it was. I'm not. He wrote it to me because I let him hear one of my pieces, and he's like, "Oh, it sounds like you are using one of the skills that we normally use." And I was like, and I think he called it like it starts with an F or something, Fasoli or something like that. I was like, "Oh, okay." Well, it was Arabic scale or something like that. But I think it's a little bit more in detail than just Arabic scale. And based off their history and based off their tradition or their, I guess their system musically is off of another system. So I think it's always interesting to see how music can kind of transcend and how it can kind of just interwoven into different ways, other than just pop, jazz, traditional pop, jazz music or traditional whatever kind of music. How do we siege that stuff? And so this past class period, I actually played quite a few examples because we were kind of the end of the medieval ages, basically going into somewhat of the early Renaissance. But there's this piece that I love, and it's actually from an old movie I used to watch when I was a kid because it was Batman: Mask of the Phantasm, which is an animated series movie. But Shirley Walker is the composer. Danny Elfman did the animated series. So, the whole opening, he did that, but she did the movie, and the opening is like so heart wrenching and everything. And it's opening chorus, and like how it opens up is like it's like a skyline of the city, and you have this chorus coming on. You have male voices, and you have the female voices is coming on. There's this interesting language that I thought was a language. What she did, it wasn't a language. It sounds like a Latin text or something, but it's not. Actually, what it is actually it's the crew members' names, and it's sung backwards actually. So it created some type of interesting thing. I was like, and it's, ever since I heard that, since I was a kid up until now, it always gives me chills. I'm like, what is the language that they're singing? I didn't know what this was, and so found out that she actually kind of just slowed it down and the production crew's name backwards, actually, which was interesting. I didn't know. Chloe Walker has passed away, but she's really known for a lot of her works. She's really, really like very some good stuff in there, and I just wanted to find a way to be able to use other examples other than the stuff that's just 200 something years old. We have that as a foundation, and then now we kind of be able to be able to try to compare, be able to kind of show something different, and how that stuff is still being, how that influence is still being active even now. Somebody mentioned black violin; they're really good too as well.
Yeah,
they're really good too as well. But before them, I remember Miri Ben Ari, who was really known as the hip hop violinist. She was a classically trained violinist, and she would always play on Styles P and Jadakiss's tracks or any track, whatever that was always on the violin. She was always the one playing it. But just like black violin and some other ones out there too as well. So, because I think in the pop world and in the rap world and just music right now, it is in a separate thing. And a lot of people, I feel like they always reference or they always draw back to what was in the 90s for the influence of culture, for the influence of what was going on, all of that kind of stuff. But the 90s also was a replica of the 80s and the 70s. So it was an awesome time to grow up then, but we also were still liking our parents' music even back then with the culture and all of that kind of stuff. So it just made, it was the 90s. This is a different time now. And I think a lot of people just want to really have kind of their own, I don't know, their own movement of music, but we can't help but to recycle and use things or reuse things that people have already used. It's not going to all be all original. So, but I guess what I'm getting at is that more so we're just trying to find ways and how we can make it appeal to, to all kind of people, all kind of backgrounds, all that kind of stuff. And, just in music, and how music can just move and how it can do what it does. And to truly understand, and maybe they don't get it right now, but it's taking a class like this, and I feel like it will help them to develop their sense of appreciation for other things as they, go into their college journey or whatever the case may be, because it's a music appreciation course. But it's teaching you how to appreciate other things that you're probably not exposed to. You know,
Yes.
you might need those skills later. You never know.
Yeah, especially going back to where you were talking about the black violinist. I have a colleague of mine. Her name is Kitty Fields. We went to George Mason with her. She was an undergraduate,
Kitty?
and Mr. Camphouse introduced me to her.
Okay.
And she had just going through her music. It was just something. It was something completely new because for me, I've never been exposed to folk music.
Mm.
Not too much. Like I knew of, obviously Dylan Thomas, just kind of the really the only large name of folk music that I'm familiar with. And as I sat down and talked with her about her music and seeing where the inspiration comes from, there's this beautiful weaving of impressionism
Mm.
with folk style melodies and harmonic direction.
Mm.
And her music is just simply amazing. It's something that could fit on a concert stage. It's something that could fit on a personal playlist.
Right.
It's really just some captivating music. I cannot think of the name of the piece off the top of my head right now, but I'll send you a link of one of her
Yeah,
pieces.
please. Yeah, because
And
I would love to hear her stuff.
yes, it is absolutely enchanting. Just from the way that she weaves what really feels like two different styles, because you have the complexity of uh impressionism going directly against the simplicity of folk music, and she finds where those two meet and
Mm.
really focuses on the differences and exposes both of those for what they are and creates something entirely new. And that's really what this new music is about. And through her, I was able to gain a new appreciation for folk music
Mm-hmm.
because I've already had a background in impressionism, Eric Satie, Claude Debussy, Maurice Ravel, and I've always followed impressionism, but through a new artist who combined two different genres, now I'm starting to backtrack from her and going through her influences to discover folk, and it's something completely new because now it's like, oh, okay, so this new element to her music that I'm not familiar with is folk. Well, she started gaining inspiration from this person. This person started gaining inspiration from this person. Their style came from this person. And just being able to backtrack through folk music, it has just been a completely different and enlightening journey
Mm.
that it took a composer like her to really bring the 2 points together.
Wow.
And, to be able to hear something and to be able to say, oh, that's something new or that's something different. What is that? Where does it come from? Who's behind it? Where can I start looking into it? That's really one of the cool things that I love about being a musician, because I
Mm.
get to, especially starting this series, I've been talking to more and more people with such different backgrounds.
Right.
For example, I found out there's such thing as symphonic metal, where it combines the metal style and genre with the fundamentals of classical music. And it's amazing. And through that, I'm able to start there. I can approach from my classical side, but now I can deviate into the metal side. And it's just, it's something that I would have never had any type of way to connect to metal music. But through that medium, that's how I'm able to do it. And it's really crucial to be able to have those points of connection, because that's really how our generation works now. I would say from our generation and forward, we have to have something that connects to us. We can't just look at something
Just
from a
yeah.
distance and be like, okay, it is what it is. A square is a square. We are the type of person like, why is this relevant to me? And then once it's why it's relevant to me is, why is that a square? What do we use to define it? Like what are the constraints that it has? So
Mm.
now we have now music appreciation is really starting to take a direction of how do we make this relevant to ourselves,
Mm-hmm. Mm.
and finding all of the, and I always tell composers, I was like, find that niche that nobody has. And for me, it's combining impressionism with the standard classical model. With my friend Kitty, it's about combining impressionism and folk music. You have the black violinist, which is about hip hop and classical. You
Mm-hmm.
were part of Hip Hop Orchestrated, which is about traditional classical music and this new age well, it's not new age now, but at the time, this revolutionary R&B sound, this Alicia Keys, this early 2000s R&B sound.
Right, right.
And it's through that we can all, if we explore our curiosities, we
Mm-hmm.
now have these different sounds that we can use to go from one genre to another. That seems like it might
Right.
have been a world away, but now there's one person that bridges the gap.
And I think that's a great point that you bring up, Chris, because you mentioned something about we do things that kind of connect with us. Like we have to have some type of connection with it because we just can't, because that was so long ago. So we need something that's kind of current, and then we try to be able to mix things up. And that's how you, that's really how you. Alicia Keys said it best. I looked at an old interview of hers. I think it was yesterday, and I remember watching this a long time ago. But what she said was that us as musicians, we're not in the political world, but we use our music as a way to kind of, as politics. You know what I'm saying? We're not a politician, but we're kind of standing in the gap of that. Using music as a tool to try to start conversation. You know what I'm saying? And at the time, I think she was doing. What was she doing? She was in London doing a showcase, so she played Fats Waller, Ain't Misbehaving. I think she did that. She did. I think it was Beethoven. She did a wide range of music. Obviously, genre to genre to genre to genre to genre. Obviously, stuff of her own. But it was something interesting about that, because during that time in pop music and music in general, you know, it had its own formula, which is an awesome formula because it's what makes the money, and there's something that works. But when you're experimenting and you're taking out that time and you're coming from that training where you know that when you was growing up and you studied this kind of stuff, you did this your own. That's why it's so natural to people who just can naturally just do that because that's how they started out, just experimenting to see what work with this, what will work with that, just trying to put stuff together. I think for
Right.
me, it's something that you mentioned, and it's also something that Alicia Keys mentioned. There's this series on Netflix called Song Exploder or Explorer, one of them, and there's various artists basically kind of working on the song and kind of going through the foundations or the fundamentals of it. But there's this song that she did on her current album called Three Hour Drive, and it's with this artist by the name of Sampha, who's based in London, who's also dope by the way too as well. He's awesome. He's a singer. He's a pianist. He's just a musician. And long story short, what it was, well, they were trying to figure it out. It was Alicia, Sampha, I think it was like two other guys, and somebody started playing chords. And then other people started, just starting melodies and that kind of thing, just having a jam session to see what would work. And from the key signature, to the key, the key of the song, to the theme, so this 3 hour drive is like, it's like a journey of going somewhere. You know what I'm saying? Like, who goes on a 3 hour drive? Like you go on a drive, you're just trying to clear your mind or something like that. But it's almost like a journey. And what they kept coming back was love and the cycle of love and how it just kind of regenerates and how regroups, all of those kind of things. Alicia was just now being a first mom when she had her son. This is obviously years after that. And Sampha unfortunately lost his mother. So they had this kind of interesting dichotomy of lost and love. So going on a 3 hour drive and just trying to, I guess, trying to find yourself or just trying to go away from something while one is celebrating, the other one is grieving, but they still work. I say that to say within music and what we're trying to do, I think we're reaching all kind of people that's coming from all kind of backgrounds. So I'm saying, so it's medicine. Clearly, it is. It's just it's tangible medicine. Um, if you let it. There have been times where I think I was in a symphony, and I think I didn't bawl. I wasn't bawling, but I was close to it. When I first got a chance to witness Mendelssohn Elijah, that is enough to make somebody weep. You always talk about the box Passion, which is also incredible too. But the Mendelssohn Elijah, that is just a work on of its own. I mean, from
That
the
is truly
writing,
a hidden gem.
yeah, 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 it is. It is. I was like, wow. But it's still coming. The St. Matthew's Passion, obviously from that, and then the Handel's Messiah. So it's all in that grouping of this. Now, who wants to? I mean, I'm just saying, like, how do we now put this into the pop world? And I'm saying, like, where does that fit in? Does it fit in? So I think this is just probably just me because you mentioned something about society and you mentioned something about classical music or classical period kind of being for the home and for society because people establish a point, they departed from it and then eventually they returned. And as we get into different periods as romantic, they kind of got completely away from that. And then after that went completely away from that. But there always is somewhat of a foundation within that. You look at Stravinsky and look at his use of folk music, or what is that? Help me out. What was it like? I think it was Indian rhythms or something that he was known
Yeah,
for.
so it was Native American rhythms. Yep,
Native
or like
American
the Rite of
rhythms,
Spring.
right?
Yep. And
Or
then you have
his use
burial
of rhythm.
folk songs where
Yeah,
he took folk songs from many different cultures. Like
right.
not different countries, but different cultures.
Japanese
And
music,
yep.
WC2 as well. Because one of the things I realized about certain composers, and Chris, you do it sometimes. Well, yours is not as overload. No offense to any shooting composers in the foot here. I just feel like a lot of times when they're in one key signature, in one time signature, it's fine if you change time signatures, but when they're changing it throughout the whole entire piece, it's almost like. But I think it's to drive it. It's supposed to create some type of dissension and some togetherness and some dissension. But if we're in 2/8, then we're going to 17/8, then we're going to 100/8, and then we're going to 16/8, and we're going to 5. I'm like, bro, I don't.
See,
Maybe I'm still trying to understand that use of rhythm because.
yeah, the way I've always approached it and the way that I see it is that there's two different types of rhythm like that where you have constantly changing meters. Well, actually, no, I'll put it into three different categories. One is you have an irregular groove. For example, if you let's say you have seven, let's say you have a measure of 7/8. We can break that into 4/3. So maybe your groove is a group of four and then a group of three, and that just causes the meter to shift. And even if you have to throw in something like maybe a 3/4, it just kind of like it breaks out of that mold and then it goes back into it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Then there's the group of people that, for lack of a better way, a more polite way to say it, they think that by changing meters and doing all of this rhythmic stuff looks more impressive, which
Okay.
in some cases is done if it's executed well, but you're kind of you're thinning the gap. You're really reducing the size of the audience and the capable musicians because you're making it more difficult and more difficult to digest.
Mm-hmm,
There is a group of people out there, but that group is definitely going to be a more niche group as far
mm-hmm.
as musicians that can perform it and audience members that can digest it. And then there is the case that I fall into where there are pieces that I write that really frustrate me because I have to write a time signature. And
Right.
while I am writing these pieces, I completely get rid of the time signature because that is irrelevant. It's not about going from beat to beat or measure to measure. It's about going from phrase to phrase. And there are just some phrases that naturally need to extend a little bit longer, or some
Mm-hmm.
that need to feel a little bit shorter. So
Right.
for me, so like now of course now that I'm trying to think one off the top of my head, I can't think of one, but I'll put a link. I'll send you a link of one of my pieces. But there is a natural constant resolution.
Okay.
For wind ensemble. There are meter changes in there that are back to back to back. But when you listen to it, it's one fluid motion.
Mm-hmm.
It's just frustrating because I have no other way to articulate it in a way that musicians can grasp what I'm looking for in terms of shaping the phrase and stuff like that. So I have to put meter in there.
Well,
So those are the three approaches I see.
Well, I loved your Starlight piece. Star something. Star, what was it?
Stargazer.
That's what it was. Yeah, Starlight, Stargazer. Yeah.
The euphonium piece, the
one
euphonium
that
piece I was working on?
you was working on because you were worried about one section of the piece, I think it was, or something. You wanted to make everything cohesive.
That was Stargazer, and then that ended up in my scrap pile, unfortunately. Yeah, I know I'm going to come back to it, but I know right now the best place for me to put it is the scrap pile. So
when I first heard your music, it was 7 Miniatures of a Widow. I think it was like two of the pieces. I think it was Sister Moon, and I think it was another piece. Maybe it was probably the overture. Do you have? No, you had a beginning.
No. There was. I don't know whether it was the Amen or the May His Soul Rest with Thee.
And I know what was the first one from that set?
The first one, We Live and Die, is one.
And then Sister Moon was second or third or fourth?
Third.
It was third.
Yeah,
okay.
Sister Moon was third.
Yeah, that was, I don't know. Like, was there something about your music that really, I could tell that you definitely took the influence of the second Viennese School of Composers. And it was very deliberate. It was very carefully thought out because of the way and how the music was being played. And, just from detail to detail, from the rhythm, it just was something very soothing and very translucent about your music that I really just kind of enjoyed. It was kind of like a breath of fresh air. It was like, because before then I had already been around composers who were composing, but listening to your music was definitely an experience. And I was like, oh yeah, this is something different. I never, so it really inspired me. And it really was like, okay, how do you find yours? You know what I'm saying? Well, you continue to keep composing, listen to music as much as you can until something kind of clicks, and you just kind of stay patient with yourself because it's not an overnight process. Right. It takes some beating, it takes some, losing, it just takes time. Even now, actually. And but it was something about just your music that just really was just an experience all on its own. And I was like, wow, yeah, this is something different. Between you and there's a few other colleagues at that time that I kind of remember because me and Professor Camphouse used to just kind of look at scores and just view scores all the time. A lot of band music because he's a band director, so it's for him that's everything. But he always looks at the instruments and treat them as kind of orchestral instruments. So it's band writing, but at the same time there are orchestral things going on that he just kind of pays attention to. I think his name was Allgood. I think I had listened to a piece.
JP
Allgood. And then there was a piece that I think him and his wife performed in, and there was the score ready. And he did a piece also for Martin Luther King too as well. So I think I got a chance to listen or view the score for that too as well.
Yeah, I remember the piece from Martin Luther King. I don't think I feel like I know which piece you're talking about.
It was something.
I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah, it was something that I was just viewing. I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, and then the cool thing about JP is that when he and I sat down, I ended up catching him. I was like, hey, let's go to lunch and let's talk for a bit. And it just found out we ended up sitting down and going to lunch for about 2 months. Every Tuesday and Thursday while both of us
were on campus.
Just like in the student center, but we just found ourselves talking, and it was the funniest thing because we both have a very similar philosophy of music, but my music is much more expressive and not expressive, but my music is much more demonstrative, and his music is so much more introspective. And we use similar elements, but it's funny watching how those similar elements manifest itself in two completely different ways. We are two completely different styles of composers, and it was just being able to sit with him and talk with his philosophies, and I was just more and more confused because I'm like, we sound a lot more similar than our music does. Like our philosophies sound a lot more similar than our music does, and it was really an experience. And for me listening to his music, with his music being so introspective and meticulous in a way that my music isn't.
Right.
It was just it was really just revolutionary. It was something that I kind of had been exposed to, but to actually know somebody who has that characteristic and to be able to explore their music, and I've explored their philosophy not only through their music, but through sitting down and talk to them over lunch. It's really just one of those really unique and cool things.
Mm-hmm. That's good, Chris. Absolutely.
Yep. And then one more thing that I forgot about, when you were talking about Alicia Keys and that group coming together and the theme being love. And you had the beginning of life, the love of, beginning life and becoming a parent and raising a child, and that dichotomy with death and losing a loved one. And the first thing that came to mind was the documentary. There's a documentary on Hulu called "We Are Love Supreme," and Love Supreme is a improv style comedy group. So Lin-Manuel, the writer of Hamilton, he was actually a part of that group. And watching that documentary, the way it started out, it literally just seemed like actually, no, I think they pretty much said it was just like they had a whole bunch of random people. This random people ended up in a group for an assignment, and they were like, well, let's take this and run with it. I think we actually have something going here. Right. And then from there, they added one more person to cover something that they felt they needed, but they didn't have. Right. And it was just, watching that documentary was literally just like, we have a bunch of, it made me think of like one of those logic puzzles where you just have a bunch of things that seem irrelevant, but what can you do with them? Right. And that's what hip hop, that's what Love Supreme became. And that documentary was really, if that's something that interests you, go on Hulu and watch it.
I'm gonna check it out, man.
Go create an email address, get that 7-day free trial, and watch that movie. It's seriously that good if you're interested in music and the social element of music, because they get raw. They talk about what really went down. There was somebody in there where they had to tell them up front. They was like, you're a good rapper, but you are about yourself. We are here for the audience. I need you to take that energy you have for yourself and give that to the audience. Put your focus on the audience. Give that same energy. And it was an uphill battle for him, and he overcame it. Wow. But, it was one of those things where he had to mix his culture with another culture.
Okay.
And it created something new.
But then that kind of goes back to what you mentioned about you and JP's music, where you just kind of describe your music versus how his music is. Because I think when I heard one of his pieces, it did kind of sound, it was very mystic. Like it was very mystic, but I see why you said it was very introspective. You know what I'm saying? And us as people in general, we all go through things and we all feel it differently. And when you have that ability and that gift to be able to do it through music, you're inviting people into your world, just looking at that ethereal voices of childhood. I think you guys got my whole entire life, even with that piece. You know what I'm saying? Just from the swirls and but it's how things kind of interwoven and how I had the poetry over it. Like I kind of just, that was a long process because I had to learn Ableton, and that was not the easiest thing to learn. But then I was like, once I learned how to sequence things, and I was kind of like laying certain things down, and I can have this part with this part and put this together. I was learning all of this kind of stuff. Then I was like, it's missing something. There's definitely, I don't know what this is missing. I'm going to try to put some spoken word over it to see what will happen. And it just kind of worked a little bit. Obviously, I would have to re-edit it a little bit because there's some distortion in it. But other than that, it still was a good piece. It kind of reminded me like an album intro or something like that. Honestly. That's kind of what I thought it was. And and to be able to put it out there for people to hear it and be able to receive it. You know, you as a composer, as a musician, you know, there's no greater feeling than that, to put your music out for people to really get their own kind of experience.
Exactly. Because that, and we talk about this. I think when I think when we were at Mason, I think this conversation came up almost every single ride home that we had. There's no feeling like somebody being able to connect with, you know, have a personal connection with your music.
Right. Right.
And going back to JP, his music is very mystic and ambient, you know, ambient, mystic, introspective. And that reached out to me, just like how my music, you know, it balances a sense of stability with a sense of shifting, kind of like the center. You're never completely settled in, but you're comfortable enough.
Right.
And that reached out to him. And it's one of those things that it really, you know, when you focus on your audience, you know, that's where we create the best music. Because my philosophy as a musician has always been, you know, to give your audience a way to get to know you. So, you know, when you're performing, you know, interpret the music in a way that's not only authentic to the composer, but that's also authentic to you.
Right.
When you're composing, write music that is, you know, if you're working with other material or trying to emulate a style, trying to emulate a rhythm or incorporate different elements, that's fine. But make sure it's authentic to you, so that when the audience gets it, they get something authentic and they get to experience something with you.
Right. Right. That's good, Chris. That's good.
Yep.
And at times, Chris, you can kind of leave the suspense. Like, I like to do that. Don't get me wrong. I do like to invite the audience in, absolutely. But there are golden moments in the piece that I just feel like you don't know what I'm doing. I just want to keep you out, because life is a journey, and how I'm looking at it is like that. You know, we get lost, we go astray, whatever. But eventually, you know what I'm saying? You know, things turn out okay. May not turn as okay, but it still does return back to some type of point or something. Well, it depends on the piece and depends on the story. It may just leave it to just linger sometimes. You know, it's good to keep some type of suspense, you know. But as an audience member, that's me thinking about my creative side. Now, being an audience member, I think we're listening into the music, depending on what I'm listening into and in the setting and the situation. Okay, cool. You know, I do want to follow you, but I want to go on a journey. So I think pictures also help that too as well. It helps propel that. You know, a lot of people sometimes do visuals, you know, kind of with their own music and that kind of thing. I think that tells a story. There's this composer, I guess artist. His name is FKJ. I don't know what he stands. I don't know what it stands for, but he has a song. He has it's something called Clang Clang. And I think I shared this with you. I think it is, but it's all pictures and it's all visuals, but he's playing piano in the background. So it shows him playing, like it opens up with him playing in some type of like house, like a beach house or something. And then all of a sudden you see the camera zooming in to like the, you know, the skyline of the sky and the sea, and like it just takes you on this whole journey. And so I played this with a few of my students when I did the summer camp. It was some pretty like things that I received from them, because when I was asking them, like I probably shouldn't be doing this for elementary school students, but hey, it was summer camp, it was music, we're gonna do it. But all it was just an experimental thing. It was like, okay, listen to a piece and just tell me what you feel. Like, what do you feel? Like, how do you describe this piece? A lot of them said that it made them miss their grandparents that was dead, or somebody that was lost. Some people felt like they was at peace when they listened to this, some like a melody or a lullaby or something like that, though. For me, it gives me like a nostalgic feeling. I have to share this with you. I'm not sure if you know about this artist by the name of FKJ.
No, I don't think you've shared this with me.
Yeah, I think you need to watch that, Chris. I think you would really be interested to see what, just what all of that basically is. And I guess all of his music, because, that's just one thing of his music. But no, it was really interesting. It was really interesting. It was interesting because how I found out about his was that Alicia shared her Spotify playlist, and on it she had various like new music that was really good. I mean, I trust that she would obviously pick some really good music. She obviously had Eric Satie on there. and she had this FKJ piece, and I was like, "What is this?" And I heard it, and I was like, "Oh yeah,
You
this
have
is
to send me
nice.
that playlist.
Yeah, this is nice. This is nice." Who knows? Alicia Keys concert, she may just kind of pop out of nowhere and do some, I don't know, Jeopardy or something like that. She might. I don't know. You know what I'm saying? What would be really dope with me working with her? I'm putting it out there. I think it would be interesting to do something like French Impressionism and be able to kind of use that as a way, because I look at that kind of music as the way to break off what was traditional. Brahms is fine. All of that stuff is good. It's still good, but there's something about that part of music, that new impressionism of music, and forth on, like how it broke things apart. And I think right now, as we have mentioned, right, we're just kind of in. It's almost like particles just scattered right now. So the thing about that kind of music helps to bring certain things together. I don't know, like it's just something about that music for me that I feel like would just be interesting, just to kind of experiment. I'll get the best results out of what I would do if I would experiment with that kind of music versus me just doing something that's traditional, something that's written in stone. I don't want to break a sonata apart. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like, I mean, but
But it would be really interesting to explore the dichotomy of R&B and then a culture of classical music that's kind of like that's pretty much its predecessor.
Chris, I thought about us doing like R&B song cycles or something like that. Not German lead, but
Good.
coming from that kind of the Robert Schumann's David's Bundler Danza, or well, that's not a character piece. What is it? Help me out, because I know you know it. Is it the David's? No, it's not David's Bundler.
Hmm. I
Di
know.
Stelipe. Di Stelipe. That's one. Or even I may not be saying. All my German people don't get on me about this, but Franz Schubert, Winterweise. Yeah.
Gotcha.
uh,
Yeah.
Winter Songs, which is where the doppelganger is on. A lot of his a lot of his German lead is on that. Actually, I think that was like kind of the last set of pieces that he composed before he passed away. Because they're
Yeah.
so dark, they're so heavy, they're so tumultuous, especially the doppelganger and the Liar Men. Um, yes, some good stuff, Chris. So I say that to say, maybe we could, do some R&B cycles or something like that, some R&B song cycles or something. I don't know.
It would
And I
be
don't know if we're the only one who has done that, because if you listen to Margaret Bonds or Florence Price, or there's still people out there who've done that already. So I mean, like I said, again, we just have to go back and just see and just kind of rediscover certain composers, because that's another thing. Samuel Coleridge Taylor, Margaret Bonds, Florence Price. There's actually there's a songbook of African songs from the diaspora, I believe it is, where they have like New Orleans like kind of rhythm for piano and something like that, African
hmm.
rhythms kind of thing. So I mean, there's so much things that I think it's just out there that we just don't know about.
Yeah, for sure. Yep.
All
And I
right,
hate to call this. I
I
hate to
know, I
wrap it up,
know,
but
because at the end,
yeah, it's starting to get a little late. But thank you so much for having this conversation with me. This has just been amazing, and just we definitely got to do this again.
absolutely, Chris, I appreciate you, man. I appreciate your gift. I appreciate your contribution. I'm still waiting for when your music will be played in the Carnegie Hall and at the venue, overseas and all of that kind of stuff, because you're very focused in your craft, and it's a gift, and you choose to share your gifts. I'm saying, so that's why those things will happen, because it's a gift, and you don't make it about you. It's about the music. It's about the medicine that people need. The tangible magic, as I said before. So
Right.
that's what it's supposed to be about.
Exactly. You nailed it right on the head. Yeah. Well, thank you so much. I
Yes, sir.
appreciate you coming out. You have a good night.
All right, man. Oh, Chris, are you going to edit this or something? I'm guessing you will.
Hold on.